I've been so often deceived by our newspaper reports that I've lost confidence in our press and believe nothing coming through the channel. Mr. Brady has done something to bring home to us the terrible reality and earnestness of war. If he has not brought bodies and laid them at our dooryards and along the streets, he has done something very like it. Though the advent of the camera and typewriter was in the past, the Civil War was the first of many to capitalize on the use of mass media. Newspapers and other forms of media were available on a phenomenal scale, with major papers available to the armies of Virginia a day or two after publication, sometimes even during active campaigns. Though widespread, the accuracy of the media was less than desirable. As to the newspapers, they are perfectly absurd. I hope you don't believe 1/10 of what you read. We would read with amazement accounts of what our own troops were supposed to have done. We have learned not to swallow anything whole that we see in the papers. If half the victories we read of were true, the rebellion would not have a leg to stand on. Though flawed, there is no debating the power the journalists exhibited with every stroke of the typewriter. The tone of the articles, the charged language, and the skewed illustrations were initially the only thing on which people had to base their opinions and feelings about the war. For new soldiers, this meant a false representation of combat, which was abruptly corrected with their first battle. Such a day, the booming of the cannon and the rattling of the muskets, you have no idea how it was. I've turned through that old book of yours and looked at the pictures and read a little about war, but I did not know anything what it was. I got to see the elephant at last, and to tell you the honest truth, I don't care about seeing him very often anymore. For if there was any fun in such work, I couldn't see it. It's not the thing it's bragged up to be. Reports of newspaper correspondents that the troops are all eager for the fray are simply bosh. I don't know any individual soldier who is at all anxious to be led, or driven for that matter, into another battle. You will call that a cowardly wish. But although we see a great many in print, we see very few in reality of such desperate heroes that they had rather go into the heat of battle than not. Regardless of how much they professed to disdain the press, the soldiers were aware of the power they possessed, and I dare say they didn't like it. General William Tecumseh Sherman had such deep hatred for the press that he attempted to ban them from his army. If I had my choice, I would kill every reporter in the world, but I'm sure we would be getting reports from hell before breakfast. William T. Sherman. The press had power over public sway, and could, with the swift stroke of a pen, make or break an officer's reputation. This tendency that the media had of tilting their information for an audience or purpose is evident in more ways than that with which they portrayed the enemy. They could use it to their advantage in the justification of political and social choices. In the New York Times article, Slaughter of the Innocents, the journalist paints a grotesque portrait of his Southern brethren, calling the use of minors in the Confederate troops an indelible disgrace upon the insurgent leaders before the civilized nations of the earth. Just a few short years later, the Northern papers changed their views on the issue. The Boston Daily Advertiser not only recognizes the use of sinless and gentle beings in the Army, but praises Little John Clem, the 12-year-old corporal who killed a rebel colonel at Chickamauga. Then, just as it does now, served a purpose and was intended to invoke a specific reaction or feeling from the reader. Just as was the purpose of Matthew Brady's exhibition of photographs, The Dead of Antietam. Matthew Brady was the first to release to the public photographs of battlefields before the bodies were removed, evoking a response from the nation and touching the souls of all those too out of reach from the fighting to see the death toll as more than statistics and ink. We see the list in the morning paper at breakfast, but dismiss its recollection with the coffee. Each of these little names that the printer struck off so lightly last night, whistling over his work, and that we speak with a clip of tongue, represents a bleeding, mangled corpse.